everybody, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another episode of A Year in the Garden, a week at a time. We are 13 weeks before last frost date. So I wanted to take you into my garden today, mostly for myself to document this, but we have the most snowpack that we have had here in 20 years. It is well over my boots, and this gives you a good clue as to how high it is, if you can see that. It's pretty high. So my trellises are a foot above the ground. And that's how far down there. So these are, I think these are 4 inches apart. So it's 16 inches. 16 inches just in my garden. And I wanted to do this, I wanted to do this today because it's supposed to get warmer this week. It is 40 degrees warmer than it was last week, because it was minus 10 last week, and it's supposed to get in the 40s this week, which is nice. So I wanted to document that. And the other reason is because I'm going to be starting my winter sowing. The weather forecasters have said that we are not going to get any more polar vortexes, knock on wood. That we should be done with that type of weather system. And so once those systems are out of the area and they say they're not going to come back, that's usually when I do my winter sowing. So let's go inside and let me show you what I'm going to winter sow this year. Let me go over what you need for winter sowing. I have a couple videos out there, and I believe I have a winter sowing playlist. I did a winter sowing 101, and there's one called It's Not Too Late for Winter Sowing. Both of those are really good sources, so I'm going to do this really quick because I don't want this video to be long. You need some kind of jugs. These are milk jugs. My son's family collects these for me because they drink a lot of milk, and so I get a big bag of milk jugs when I ask for it. Make sure that they are rinsed out, and when you go to store them, don't put the caps on, because otherwise they really smell if you do that. You can use any kind of jugs. You can use like juice bottles. You can use 2-liter soda bottles. You can use just about any kind of plastic bottle that has a lid like this on it, or an opening like that on it. But I like to use milk jugs because they are easy to get the plants out of once the plants are ready to be planted. Then you need a scissors, some duct tape, a drill or something that can poke holes in the milk jug. And I just have my drill with the biggest bit on it that I have, and that's enough. You need some kind of tags, and most importantly you need a paint pen. So I got this one at Walmart, I believe. You can find them at Hobby Lobby. And you want to use paint pens instead of the Sharpie markers, because these don't succumb to the UV. And there's nothing worse than getting your winter sowing and not knowing what's in it, because the sun has completely faded away the marker on it. So I always use a paint pen. You need some seeds. This is what I'm going to be planting. And then you need some potting soil. And this is mine. I use this. Let me drop it here. So this Pro Mix Premium All-Purpose Potting Soil. This is my choice for my winter sowing. It's also my choice for when I do my containers in my yard. You can get a bale of this. This is 2 cubic feet of potting soil for 15 bucks at Menards. And I'm fortunate that my Menards is mostly indoors, so it's not frozen. So I've got this potting mix that has been sitting in the house for a while. You don't have to worry about sterilizing it because you're going to be putting these things outside and you don't have to worry about fungus gnats or anything like that. But this is my potting mix of choice. The other thing I use is something to mix the soil in to get it wet. And I use one of these tubs. I usually have a bigger one, but it's out in my greenhouse and the door is frozen shut. So there's no way I'm getting through it. But this one's fine. You know, something to stir the dirt with. And then tags. I have more tags here for inside. You want to label your containers inside and out. Because if something would happen and I've never had the paint get worn off, or whatever you want to call it, but just in case something would happen, I put a label inside the container and then I write on the outside of the container. So if I would have to do my top 5 tips for winter sowing, I would probably say use a paint pen. Don't use a marker, use a paint pen. Make sure your soil is pretty wet when you put it in the jugs, because it's not going to be watered for a while. It'll freeze right away, but during the day here, especially if it's sunny this time of year, it will probably melt. The water will melt, and you want it to be pretty wet. The second thing is, you do want to put holes in the bottom of your container, but make sure you put a hole about 1 inch up on the side, because as the snow melts around this, it tends to get stuck to the ground in wherever you're putting it. And so, because you don't want all the water to drain away, this still needs to stay moist, but you want to make sure that once it's frozen to the ground, again, that if we do get a rainstorm or something like that, it can drain out the sides. And so put a hole in the sides. So that was holes in the sides of the container. Make sure your soil is wet. Make sure you use a paint pen. Make sure you put a tag inside the container, so you have 2 tags. And the other thing is, make sure you set your jugs in a sunny location. You don't want to set them on the north side of your house right now, because the sun is going to really help let them know when it's time to germinate, because you're letting Mother Nature kind of figure out your timing here for germinating. And you'd be surprised how fast. Like, I'll probably have these up in the middle of March, because our sun here gets so warm so fast that these things are pretty well protected, and they germinate. And I'm always shocked when I see germination, especially if you're doing cold weather vegetables. They will germinate. So those are my top 5 tips. Now I'm going to go through and show you what I'm going to plant for now. This is my first winter sowing planting. So I'll do another one of these probably later on for a little more sensitive plants that I don't like the seeds can't take the really cold weather, because we'll still get below 0 here at night every once in a while, especially on the really sunny days, because there's a lot of snow on the ground. There isn't anything warming it up, so if it's clear, it gets cold. One of the big questions I get the most is, what can't you plant for winter sowing? And I would say any of the warm weather vegetables and fruits. So I wouldn't do watermelon, I wouldn't do cantaloupe or any other kind of melon. Peppers don't necessarily like winter sowing. I mean, they're finicky in the best of conditions, so just to throw them out there. I always throw a jug out just to see if they make it, and maybe I'll do that with my second crop or second batch of winter sowing, but they just don't like it, so I don't even bother. Seeds are too expensive to waste them on winter sowing. Tomatoes do very well. Even if you throw them out now, they do very, very well. I get really good germination rates with tomatoes, surprisingly enough, because they're a warm weather crop. So like any of your brassicas, none of your cucurbits, like no cucumbers, none of that, they don't do very well. So just kind of think about what's a warm weather vegetable and what's a cold weather vegetable, and you'll do fine with this. So what am I planting? Cabbage. Gonzalez mini cabbage. I really liked these last year. They're about the size of a softball, maybe a little bigger. So these will do very well in winter sowing. Lettuce does well in winter sowing. This is Gabriella. It's a ruby red, not ruby red, probably Merlot red lettuce. Believe it or not, I plant this one mostly because it's pretty. I don't necessarily like the way it tastes, but it's just such a beautiful plant that I love to plant it. This year, instead of bok choy, I'm going to grow this tatsoi and see if I like that. So bok choy, pak choy, any of those Chinese vegetables do very well in winter sowing. This one is called Mizuna Beni Housi. It's like a cutting lettuce, a cutting celery. And I'm going to do that one in there. I told myself I wasn't going to do this, but I am. Broccoli. Let's see if we can get some broccolis to growing. I've got 2 hybrid broccolis here from Johnny's. Kale. This blue curled Scotch kale does very well. Here's more broccoli, and more kale. One of the things I forgot to grab was spinach. Spinach does very well in winter sowing. Carrots do not. Anything that doesn't like its root to be disturbed does not do very well in winter sowing. So I think what I'm going to do is do 1 jug with you, and then I'm just going to do the rest of them. If you have more questions, you can check out my Winter Sowing 101 series, not a series, video, and I cover everything in there. And then I have that other video for winter sowing, and I'm going to put the links down in the box below so you can kind of see an in-depth version of this. Right now I really don't want to take up your time, where your time is better spent watching that other video, because nothing has changed in how I do this. I do it the same as I did it years ago, and it works for me every time. These vegetables do very well outside, and I don't have to worry about taking care of them in my grow room downstairs. So let's go. I'm going to do 1 of these jugs. So I put 4 holes in the bottom of this. See that? 4 holes. 1 on each side. So you can see, this is here. So there's a line right here. I always go right at that line. And then I put 1, where do I want this? Like right. See where the handle comes down? I put 1 right here. I use that to start cutting. Now, I've tried other methods and I like this one the best because, see how that opens up like that? Because I can put my hand in there and scoop out whatever's planted in here. It's just so much easier. So that's how I prepare my jugs. Now I'm going to fill them with water and plant the seeds. So if I were doing pots outside, this is exactly the moisture that I would get the potty mix to. Where you squeeze it, no water comes out, and it holds together. But for winter sowing, you want it wetter. So I'm going to add more water to this. If I squeeze it, water comes out. Do you see that? That's how wet you want it. So now I'm going to take my prepared jug, fill it with water, fill it with dirt. You want to put at least 3 inches in here. 3 to 4. Whoops, stick. You want a lot of dirt. Remember, your plants are going to be in here for a long time. At least mine are. Because this is February, what day is this? February 21st. My plants are going to be in here until, well, these ones will be in here until probably beginning of May. So, and I just pat it down a little bit. I'm not pushing down very hard at all. Okay, I'm going to get my little hole-making tool, which someone kindly told me was a dibbler. And I make 9 holes in here. And I make them about that deep, right there. So, because as the water goes in here, this soil will settle. Then let's get kale. And for me, 9 plants of kale is going to be fine. So I will just grab 2 or 3 seeds and just drop them in there. Then I just collapse all the holes. Pat it down really good, make sure the seeds have contact. And now we're going to tape up the sides. Kale. I want to let it dry Now, one of the things I'm going to do is think about which side is going to face the sun. So I will most likely I'm going to put it on this side because I'll most likely right here. So now I'm going to take a piece of duct tape. I got to stand up when I do this one. Ooh, that tape is sticky. So when you set this, you want to set this side away from the sun, so facing north. And that's all there is to it. Now you don't have to water this again before you put it out there because your potting soil is really moist. If you get a stretch of weather without any snow or any rain or whatever you get this time of year, always check to make sure there's condensation on the outside here. So if there's no condensation on the outside, then you need to water these. But chances are they're going to be fine for quite a while. I usually don't have to water my winter sowing until late April, early May. So we get enough rain and enough snow. So that's all set to go. So normally I set these jugs in my raised bed garden because it's fenced in and I know the dogs aren't going to get in there. I know nothing's going to disturb it. You can set them anywhere, like I mentioned before, just as long as they're in the sun. But we've got so much snow on my raised beds right now. I don't know, maybe I can just set them down in there so that they are kind of solid, because I'm afraid as they melt, they're going to tip over. So I don't know. We'll see. I'll just have to keep an eye on them, especially this week with the warm temperatures we're getting. The snow is going to be melting. So I'm going to try to finish up the rest of these because we're supposed to be getting more snow today, 1 to 3 inches today. But it is warm out. It's 33 degrees outside, so that's nice. It feels practically balmy outside after that big stretch of cold weather. I kind of hope the rest of the country warms up too, because I know that especially people down in Texas are really having a hard time. So I've been thinking about them a lot. Let me know down below in the comments if you have any questions about winter sowing. You can do winter sowing in just about any zone. I mean, there are a lot of zones where you don't need to do winter sowing, but you can do winter sowing in just about any zone. And even if you don't get a frost, but you get cold, you can do winter sowing. Because it just is basically a little terrarium or a little greenhouse for your plants. That's all that winter sowing is. And it lets your plants germinate in Mother Nature's time. So that's one of the wonderful advantages of it. So good luck. Again, let me know if you have any questions down in the comments section below. By the time you see this, I will have hit 2,000 subscribers, so that's a big deal for me. That means I will have doubled my subscriber count in less than a year. So thank you to all of you who have subscribed to my channel. I really appreciate each and every one of you. And if you haven't subscribed, what are you waiting for? Again, thank you so much for watching, and good luck with your winter sowing. If you have any questions, let me know. Take care, everybody. Have a great week. See you next week. Bye-bye.